Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Um, this event, Likely Stories, Chaos, and Cosmos, is a part of AIGA Baltimore's Design Month this October, which is coming to an end. But we're excited to have Lori as well as our panelists here. We're going to introduce them in a second, but I just wanted to give a little background on our organization. So I'm Frances Miller, president of AIGA Baltimore. If you haven't joined any of the Design Month's events yet, you might not be familiar with our theme, but you'll start to see from the screen that was just up and from our backgrounds, our theme is Inside Out, and that's going to relate to what we're discussing tonight. But really the inspiration for that is related to the pandemic and this last 2 years of everything going on, and how right now we're feeling hopeful and excited, but at the same time, a lot of us are still feeling not great, and that's okay. And so we're kind of trying to welcome all those emotions. We're having in-person and virtual events and trying to join together from all different ways. So we really appreciate you coming out here from your homes or from wherever you are. And hopefully at the end of this, you'll get the chance to turn off your mic as well if you're comfortable doing so, or comment in the chat and talk to us and tell us your own stories. But anyway, so with all that, AIGA Baltimore is Charm City's chapter of AIGA, the Professional Association for Design. And our mission is to advance design as a professional craft, a strategic tool, and a vital cultural force. So if you're interested in learning more about our chapter, membership, and volunteer opportunities, including board leadership, as well as event volunteering opportunities, you can visit us at baltimore.aiga.org. And then I'm going to bring up Raquel Castedo, who is on our board, as well as Soda Baltimore, our co-host for tonight. So she'll be telling you a little bit more.
Hi, Frances. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are very happy to have you all with us. So my name is Raquel Castedo. I'm a member of AIGA Baltimore's board as programming chair, and also a member of SODA, which stands for Society of Design Arts. We're very happy with this collaboration with AIGA Baltimore and also with Stevenson University that has been partnering with us for a year. So SODA was founded over 15 years ago in Baltimore by an all-volunteer group of teachers, students, and design professionals. All of them were very passionate about the multiple histories of design arts, including graphic design, illustration, architecture, book arts, photography, and many more. SODA has provided more than 100 programs that have explored diverse subjects in the past years. And if you want to have a better idea of our past programs, please check out our website, sodabaltimore.com. And while you're there, sign up on our mailing list to find out about future events. In our website, you're going to see that we have been partnering with AIGA Baltimore and building together a community interested in design history and its positive impact on design practice and contemporary life. If you're interested in helping to plan, research, and present programs, please feel free to reach out to us. We are very excited to have you this evening. And now I want to say hi and welcome our panelists. So first, I want to welcome Lori Rubeling. Lori is Professor of Art and Graphic Design at Stevenson University. Professor Rubeling was recently appointed Faculty Director of Exhibitions for Stevenson University. Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Hello, welcome. We have also next to Lori, and it's amazing that we're having an in-person hybrid event, Richard Stanley, who is also part of SODA. Retired from corporate and studio design work. He currently freelances, occasionally teaches at area colleges and universities, and pursues fine arts interests. Hi, Richard, welcome.
Thank you.
We want to welcome to and invite to join us Rikiesha Metzger. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Keisha is a student at the Institute for Doctoral Studies in the Visual Arts, pursuing a degree in philosophy, aesthetics, and art theory, a working mom and adjunct professor at MICA. She's an art teacher at Hamden Christian School. Thank you for joining us. And I want to invite to Ebony Kenney. Ebony is a design and communications professional, as well as a market research analyst with over 20 years in the industry. Hi, Ebony, welcome.
Hi.
So I want to pass now to Laurie, and let's get started.
Thank you. So folks, the first thing we're going to do tonight is we have a second camera, and what we're going to do is I'm going to walk around the gallery with the camera and just look at the show. So this is Likely Stories, Chaos to Cosmos. And Raquel, just to let you know, I don't see the camera on the screen, but that's just me. Good, thank you. All right. Good. Thank you. So can all the panelists join, I guess, now? How do we do that?
Okay.
Good. All right. So I'm going to share some notes. And I guess, Raquel, if we could have all four panelists up now, that would be great. Just give you some overview and notes and some definitions for what the show's about. And then the four of us are just going to have a conversation around what we have going on here. So Likely Stories, Chaos and Cosmos is a drawing installation. I think of it as a drawing installation. And it represents my attention to and understanding in ways that cosmology concepts help us help us remember what we know and how we know it. So it has a lot to do with memory. I am taking my cues and from a historical pre-Socratic philosopher His name is Anaximander, and he is considered to be the first Western European author of architectural theory. And he imitated, what he did is he was observing celestial patterns, and then he imitated through mimesis what he observed into three-dimensional models. And the three models that he produced, celestial sphere or armillary, a sundial or a gnomon, the gnomon would be the language he used, and a T-map, which is a circular representation of the three known continents at the time, 2 main rivers and 3 ocean seas. Yes, so the installation is the beginning of a creative inquiry and a new way of working for me, and I'm calling it play. And it's my attempt to merge my 3 areas of research and content. So it's drawing, architectonics, and metaphysics philosophy inquiry. Depending upon how you look at it, there are 4 or 5 stories in play here. Circle to a line are diagrams, straw crosscut of a giant sequoia tree, a ruler, sequoia ruler, which is the full length of a giant sequoia tree, 279 feet. And then infinity drawings. So the drawing behind me and the drawings to our left are, I call them infinity diagrams. And in my mind, they are simply records of their making, records of the drawing process, and definitely a set of constraints, media constraints, and are inspired by Edwin Abbott's Flatland, a romance of many dimensions. And then the wall, the hypertext typology wall, which is the last side of the gallery that I showed you, is a visual map of 4 themes in my thinking. So pattern recognition, memory and remembering, perception, and how to imagine. The wallpaper surface design right to over my shoulder is a visual field of figure ground tension. And when you're in the space, you get this feeling of things in motion, kind of tumbling down and harmony, or basically it kind of graphically represents chaos and cosmos. And then lastly, actually the first object that I interacted with in the gallery, the Odrotic, is a 3D representation of a character in a Franz Kafka short story called Cares of a Family Man. Good. So when Raquel and I started to discuss perhaps including the exhibition for the AIGA's Design Month, I thought the way we could, or a good connection is how might we share ideas around COVID, ideas around disruption through storytelling. And just to let you all know, the title of the exhibition, Likely Stories, Chaos and Cosmos, is attributed to my St. John's tutor, Ava Brand. And she, for a semester, she tutored me in, many of us, in metaphysics. And basically, she started the course out with this statement that all knowledge begins with likely stories. So what do we mean by a likely story? I understand it to be how an experience begins to evolve into practical or cultural knowledge, and then over time, through discussion and debate, true opinion emerges. So that's a pretty good definition, right? Mm-hmm. Ebony and Rikiesha and Richard have all seen the exhibition. So I'm opening up to you. What would you like to say? And about the theme, likely stories.
Well, if I could start, I actually like the fact that you started off with this idea of play. And then not only did you start off with that idea of play, you actually pushed the, what is this? The Odrotic, mm-hmm. and putting that into motion. And the same thing that you said with the way that you put your background up, where we are in and out of the space, again, inside out actually. But we are drawn in and then we also come out. And so the sound that every time it rode, again, I felt a vibration of some sort where I was drawn in, but then I was pressed back out. And I was drawn in and I was pressed back out. So that idea of play really resonated with me when you actually used the word to talk about how your exhibition actually is coming together and what you're using play to do.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. And for me, so after the first time I saw the exhibit, you kind of come out of the exhibit and you have in your mind why it's called that, right? Without having had the conversation with you. And what I really got, and I'm glad it resonates with what I'm hearing also in the explanation, is that likely stories, it's almost as if we are at a point where as accurate as we can get is what is likely. And maybe the more we bring in stories and narratives, we get even to possibility. Where, of course, there was a point where we were at predictability. So that's what I'm feeling, that the stories take us to a more human place.
Well, stories, there are so many different stories that are on the walls all around. And every story, every person visualizing it is looking at it through their own stories, their collected experiences and perceptions. And so you're drawn to the particular stories that you're interested in. I like semiotics, so I go right to the diagram that looks like that. I love the geometric drawings and so forth, because that's something that I admire and would like to do. So there are many different things to do, and the stories that we bring to the exhibit. So that's why I found it very enriching. And these are, of course, all likely stories because they're here. I can see them. And so I'd like to see that carried forward into my own work. It certainly has influenced me and gotten me thinking a lot about the subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Richard, you started just inquiring, like talking to your friends, doing some great field research.
Yeah, right.
And what did you, what were some of the conversation you had about it?
Well, I had been thinking about stories. How do you define a story? What constitutes one, an individual story, and how you're influenced by it. So I started to just ask people that were in different professions, what their perception of stories was, how they would define it. A filmmaker friend of mine thinks of stories serially, where you have an image, a sequence of narrated images, and you have to have layers on top of that. So there are many stories intertwined. Another conversation was with a friend of mine who was a retired judge, was in youth court. And so I asked him, how did he perceive the stories from the people that were in front of him? And he said, the thing that I always had to remember was that there's always two stories going on. There is the story that you're being told by the individual. There is your own story that you're always looking and filtering and reacting to. And you have to be very careful to keep those two in mind. So you're aware of the fact that you've got two different stories going on.
And I think with this piece about the stories, I guess the stories, it's like, how many stories do you need until you make up the truth, And if we're looking at, I think it's figure or axis, one of those pictures that's over there, Lori, on the wall. I don't know if you want to show. It reminds me, if you look at it a long time, it looks almost like a 3D of, I don't know, it looks, of course, celestial and the cosmos, but I'm also seeing like bicycle spokes. So I'm thinking about the integrity of a bicycle wheel. So if you had the bicycle.
Raquel, can you turn on the mic?
Yeah, it's on.
This one here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, like, if you don't have, I'd heard this definition of integrity. It's a universal definition, not so unique, but just talks about how the integrity is made up of the spokes. So if the spokes were removed, the wheel wouldn't have integrity, it wouldn't hold weight. And so the stories for me now are the spokes in this conversation. So how many stories make up the truth, make up something that's grounding, that you can stand on or build something on?
Wonderful. I'm going to show this one up here.
That's an interesting observation, because the idea of the wheel is a universal, so the timeliness of it revolves. It comes back on itself as opposed to something that's linear, which goes in one direction. And the wheel is, and the spokes and so forth are all like because I had imagined it like a tree or a river where you'd have the main piece would be fed by tributaries or branches. But this is in fact a better way to look at it. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because the spokes of the wheel tends to make a universality out of it rather than just a linear progression.
Maybe in that same vein, or a little different, when I'm thinking about this story of the wheel, is that again, every time we tell that story, a new story forms from that story, because we are reinventing that story that was told from the first time that we heard it. Because we may actually put our own selves into that story and think about how did we get to that story, or what did we get from that story when we first heard it. And I'll say, like, even those access points, you know, I looked at the work and I wondered, like, well, why do they just stop at the edge of the paper instead of going onto the wall, into those behind the background? You know, because it seems to me that it keeps us trapped inside, which again, like these boxes that we're in right now, and I know we talked about this before, but you know, what these boxes do is that right now we're talking to each other and the four of us, but there are other people that are out there that can actually see us. So again, if we go outside of the box, then that's how those stories start to travel. And that's how they start to become stories that we can continue to tell and then add to our own interpretation of what we're getting from those stories.
Gosh, that is just beautiful and elegant. And, you know, the typology wall, right, has 4 themes: pattern recognition, and then the art of memory or remembering, perception, and then how to imagine. It's also, folks, it's also my syllabus for aesthetics. So, but I just want to, mimesis, right, is an important kind of emergent characteristic of aesthetics. And of course, all sense perception, right, starts with our 5 senses. And it's in the, and Plato has wrote, or, you know, talks about the myth of recollection, right? And the notion that we are can remember or feel connected to our ancestors' memory, right? Even though perhaps, you know, they're no longer physically with us. And so, Rikiesha, you're just beautiful of that comment. I'm also reminded of so Sue Johnson, who came in and saw the show a couple of weeks ago. She just said, Lori, you know, the cross-cut straw drawing on the wall, right? That, like you, Rikiesha, all these drawings would probably be as impactful or more impactful if they were directly on the wall and weren't necessarily contained by an edge. So I take that really well, and thank you for that. It's really interesting. The box, though, has always been a part of one of my aesthetic concerns, definitely, right? And so just I guess as a totality of this show, right? The show is 40 years of work, right? You know, it's come out of 40 years of exploration and of working, and that the box, and how does the box unfold? How do we unfold? There's a future and a past, you know, moving with our action, our being in time right now is important.
You think of the box metaphorically then? It's something that's a container for the work that you've done over that period of time?
It is, functions as a form, right? As an analogy, not necessarily a metaphor, but as an analogy, right, as a situation. Okay. I guess to be very specific, the way sides of a box just fold, just animate, is truly interesting to me. So
it's interesting, like a stage where you have the 3 walls and then somebody breaks the 4th wall. Exactly. And so the walls of that box are permeable as well.
Yeah, definitely. But, you know, the drawings are, you know, of the imagination, right? Where the installation is in the world and is shareable, right? Becomes the model. That's interesting.
What's interesting about the box for me, as you all are talking through it, is that it also is like a capture. It's like the snapshot. So if we're talking about accessibility, like not 508, but like it's approachability. It's like, where do you create that? So let's say that at one point it was that a higher thought, you know, art, really elite art was not as approachable maybe, and that was a part of the journey. So now that we're bringing in stories and narratives and sometimes things that are more approachable. It's like, how does that change the art? How does it change the experience of the art? And does it then validate maybe that we need the box just as a construct? Like it's a handle on a thing.
Yeah, and it's that common shared touch point, right? That then we bring, we can ask, well, what's Lori up to, right? But then of course we can also ask what we bring to it. Ebony, you want to share your comment, or I'm interested for you sharing it with everyone, your thinking around zeros and ones.
Well, yeah, the minute that you were telling me about the circles and lines and began to read and see how it really showed up in the art, that's what came up for me, that binary that is at the core of computer programming. And just that, well, on one hand, it's like, that's the fundamentals. That's as core base levels you can get to, is these zeros and ones that all framework is sort of built on top of. And so how much more so also the circles and the lines. So you think about a circle and a line, maybe, so in that bike analogy, it makes up the whole piece. It has movement and it has stillness, so it takes you from the stillness to the 3D and on. So yeah, just that binary kind of piece as a foundational, very at the core, and that you have to span out so far. You have to kind of zoom out so far in your mind to just say, how can I make things fit into categories? Am I going to move or stop, right? It's like you can't be too detailed to get to that, that binary viewpoint.
Thank you. It's so interesting. Hopefully we'll get back to the straw drawing, the wall drawing, and the bamboo drawing, but we're getting some questions being asked right now. So really good questions like, where can we see the show? And I'll make sure that we type that in the chat line, but it's on the Green Spring campus of Stevenson University in the art gallery, which is just located in the theater lobby. This coming Sunday, November 7th from 12:30 to 2, there's going to be a reception. So if you'd like to come see the show and hang out with me and, your new best friends, that would be a great time. And the show will be open through, let's say, December 20th, I think. And then we have, and then the next exhibition comes up in the fall, and it's 1525 Green Spring Valley Road, 21153. So when did, so I started working on this exhibition about a year ago. I was tapped by the exhibition director, previous exhibition director, to be the featured faculty of Stevenson University. And I started from a very kind of pedestrian, like, okay, I'm going to just put a bunch of my infinity drawings on the wall, the one behind me, because it was a series I was working on. And then, of course, then I said, oh, I can challenge myself more than that. And then I set out for about 7 months to really iterate, working in my sketchbook, imagining tons of scenarios and thinking about I guess definitely thinking about disruption and climate change. So that came in to my thinking, and a new thought, like typically I stay kind of ideal and abstract, right? Anyway, so climate change came into my thinking. Raquel was involved, and she goes, Lori, how are you going to get color into this space? And that was the challenge. I said, I don't know. How am I going to get color into it? And that's when the wallpaper came in. And the imagery for the wallpapers, basically an inventory of shapes, glyphs, and forms that sometimes I've built three-dimensionally, architectural spaces, the odrotic, and of course, game-like bits and pieces of things. I had a team of 3 students, Angel Rudder, Tana Marshall, and Rebecca Doyle, who were my assistants, who helped me install the show. We started installing end of May, and we finished mid-August. So that's cool. Yeah. I hope I answered that correctly. How did the pandemic, I guess I really wanted to be physical again. I think ultimately, the first thought was just challenging myself physically. And I really am thinking about disruption and how touch points and things that we all value and understand are no longer kind of in play. And I'm trying to imagine how might we figure out what's important, you know, what we should be paying attention to and relate to things.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that, Richard?
Well, it's I had thought, going back, adding on to Ebony's comment about the circle and the line, direct reaction that I had when I saw the sequoia cross section and the measuring stick of that was that the trunk of the tree seems to me to be the line, and the growth rings that come out from that are the circular elements. And so if you're thinking of the tree as a timeline, a life timeline, and as the growth rings as being the accretion of the stories that you hear and how it adds to the knowledge and the strength of the tree, you're really looking at it as a growth symbol with the tree and the line and the circle together. So that was a direct reaction to this. As far as the pandemic was concerned, for me, since I didn't have a job that I went to anyway and so forth, I was able to start concentrating on a new type of photography that I was working on, just because I had limitations. I couldn't go outside my yard. So the limitation was you have to use your iPhone. It has to be inside the house or in the yard. And that's it. That's all you get. And so I did that for a year. And on my website there, that's a series called The Bunker Photographs. So anybody's interested, but it was fun. It was a limitation that turned out to be very well.
Mm-hmm. And Rikiesha and Ebony, the question is out there, you know, from the audience. How did the pandemic impact the work process for you?
Oh, I can go. Okay. So for me, what it challenged me to do was to tell my stories through social media. So, and my husband, he told me, he said, you only have 9 pictures on your social media. You've been on Instagram for, you know, I think since 2009. And so he gave me this challenge that, you know, he said, if you don't put pictures up, you might as well throw it away. So because of that challenge, I've been posting every day, and every day someone gets a different piece of my life added to theirs, or again, a story that's added to their story about, I never thought about things that way. So then I get people inboxing me, or they'll tell me that, you know, they had fun reading something, or it made them think about, you know, things that they hadn't thought about before. And then also it puts a different spin on things. So the reason why I add to my my introduction, why I added those things, is because it's important to what's going on in my life right now at this moment. And so again, you get to see a piece of me being in school. So sometimes I'll show a little snippet of my paper. Sometimes you'll see my children, sometimes you'll see my husband, sometimes, again, you see the work that I'm doing with my students at Hamden Christian School. So it's allowed me to put things in boxes, but then also, again, those things come out of the box when other people get a chance to witness what's unfolding, as you said, Lori, and what happens in those boxes. Once people hear, they see the picture first, and it draws them into what's happening and what comes in with the story.
Great.
I think for me, everything intensified during the pandemic. So it like sent me within, it sent me to that sort of research and observe mode, you know, watching and scanning my environment, which was good because it helped me to kind of see people and kind of come from a place where I'm appreciating what's coming from people, and then who I am distinctly. So it's made my own voice maybe a little bit stronger even during that time and whatever it is that I create. So.
Cool. We want to follow up on this. One of our guests, right, a part of the webinar, has a question for you. How did it feel to reflect on art that has been made pre-pandemic? Did it affect the way you choose to convey your art, or in your case, design, to your audience?
Certainly brought in, yes, I would say if I'm thinking, it certainly brought in a matter of like, what are people thinking and feeling even more? So being in usability, I'm already concerned about what are people thinking and feeling, but you know, the way it is communicated to me is how they navigate a page, how they navigate something. web page or an application or even a design. So in this case, I'm thinking even before it reaches surface level, you know, how is what they're thinking and feeling affecting their mood, and what are they bringing to the space wherever I may encounter them.
I just want to add here that Ebony has has work in a show at Stevenson in the Kevin Manning Academic Center, the second floor art gallery, and it's called Creative Research Processes. Sue Johnson, Ebony, and Johan Lowy. So your research, your field research in Rwanda, right, is beautiful, really interesting wall, pinup wall. And there's a website. Maybe Ebony, you can like type all that business into the chat line for everyone to connect to. It's been really great. And this exhibition is about sharing creative processes as much as it is looking at finished work. And then the creative research processes installation on the Owings Mills North Campus is also just inspiring and showing design students, showing anyone who wants to see 3 distinct variations of the research process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds interesting. I haven't seen those yet.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that now.
Yes, and that closes around November 17th. So we need to see it sooner than later.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So Jamal Bennett, to everyone, share, semiotics.
Yes.
And I guess, actually, folks, now, we're halfway through tonight's webinar. If you would like to join the conversation, you are invited to raise your hand. SART. SART and semiotics, please. SART.
That's really for me, semiotics has got a couple of different flavors. And although it started as a linguistic study, nevertheless, I've left it into that linguistic side where the SART and Dissare and people like that are, and I'm taking it over into the visual side. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of semiotics being an analysis of form, content, and context. And I think all of the stories that we hear or that we tell have a subject, and they are communicated to people in some form or another, whether it's visual, verbal, etc. And they go to someone, the context. And the context, of course, can be an audience of people that are of like mind or that need convincing otherwise or something like that. And so my process has always been to try to analyze the messages I'm putting together, whether in a personal photograph or whether it's a graphic design, corporate identity or something like that, in those terms. And so I can't really comment on the literature or that side of things. I'd be happy to turn that over to you. I think you know more about it than I do.
I am not. I don't necessarily pay attention to Sartre, but I paid attention to his partner, Simone de Beauvoir. Yep. And recently, her thinking around how meaning is constructed. So, again, we're in the mid 20th century. Kind of shared universals are waning. We're emerging in postmodern thinking, right? Rejecting the modernist universal. And she frames philosophic inquiry, metaphysics, as this inquiry into meaning. And of course, the meaning is subjective. It begins at the subjective, your meaning, my meaning. Actually, all of our understandings, right, begins with sensorial stimulation, and then it gets processed chemically, right, in our brain synapses, and then it connects up with other previous memories that are collected up there, and then we start making relationships, or as Charles Peirce would call it, the abductive process, right? It's very open-ended, and it is literally remembering as opposed to knowing the answer to something. So it's always in a process of our understanding evolving. You can open the mic up now, Raquel. Huh.
Yeah.
Jamal, are you gonna talk with us?
Yeah, like to know a little bit more about Jamal's question in terms of whether he's opening it up to the stylistic or the meaning process, or because all of the paintings of Picasso, for example, do tell stories. Guernica is certainly a story. Well, and the stories of the
Mademoiselle d'Avignon.
Yeah. So they all are like that.
Okay, we're trying to get the participation from the audience to work, but we're having some trouble. I'm wondering, Rikiesha or Ebony, do you have you studied much around how Picasso's appropriation of African art and the origins of that? I have an opinion about it, but I'm wondering if either one of you would like to talk about that.
Not directly, I haven't.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm no expert on it by any means, so I'm not going to touch it. But I do want to mention, since we are adding to the conversation, that I have my work is in an exhibition as well. So I sent it to everyone in the link, just because everybody was talking about what they're doing and what they're up to. And funny enough, it's related to being in the box. And so the work is called I Get Out, and it's by Lauren Hill. And so she says, I get out of all your boxes. So yeah, if you want to, see it and check it out, I did put the link in the chat so everybody can go and see it.
Great.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And is Oakton Community College close by?
So it's actually in Chicago, but again, because of these, virtual spaces that we're in right now, and again, the coming in and going out and how we are able to share those stories. One of my friends said, "Oh, you might be interested in this because it seems that your work relates to what they're doing here with this exhibition." And so I applied, and so my work is up now, and I think until November sometime. So.
Okay, excellent.
Right.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it looks like Stephen King is raising their hand, and I'm just watching Raquel. Raquel, we're ready to go whenever you are.
Hi, Jamal. Are you able to turn your mic on?
I'm asking the question. Can you hear me now?
Awesome. Yes, we hear you.
So yeah, going back maybe 18 steps backwards, semiotics, because that was a struggle for me in college and as an adult, because Pablo Picasso, he sure did rape Africa, and he had so many dope pieces from every tribe across the continent based off of semiotics. So I want to ask a question to the experts.
I have an opinion about that. Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm just reacting to that. I'm interested, Jamal, in your reaction to it in terms of how the influence connects between Picasso and the African art.
I believe he gave an avenue for the rest of this planet to understand the significance of Chihuahua Bambara, Dan, everything Eastern African and everything Central African. I think he gave, before there was Facebook, many years ago, I think he gave an avenue for everybody that's in Europe to appreciate it. And then he made it abstract. That was a thing. Like, why do you have to twist it up like this? Chihuahua Bambara is beautiful the way it is. I want to hear your words.
Sure. Well, so, what's so interesting about African art, so in the, right around the turn of the century, African art was starting to be shown in galleries in Paris. So that's how Picasso encountered it, as well as he encountered it at the Paris World's Fair, 1900, 1904, right? So in addition to that, Japanese print making, right, prints were first shown in Paris in 1863, right? So and that spurned, talk about 1,000 ships, that floating world space encouraged Europeans to understand semiotics, figure ground very differently. But with, so what we see in Picasso,
semiotics, everything is significant. Every mask means something. So
Totally,
semiotics,
yes.
Absolutely.
just, it drove the nail home. I'm listening. Go ahead.
no, that's okay. So we get to, so straightforward semiotics is sign, right? A sign, a form. And then what is it signifying? Okay. So then, therefore, signification or meaning is then anchored to context, right? So the African masks now is contextualized in Picasso's painting as opposed to a ritual, a community ritual, right? Or, a priest or a priestess, right? In my community.
Well done.
Okay. So now, is one better than the other, more accurate than the other? Picasso is literally playing. He is playing. Another influence of Picasso's cubism is the mechanics of a projector, right? So in first encounters of cinema, you were in a department store, right? In a small room, the projector was in the middle of the space, not behind us, right? And it's clickety clack and it's heat and the whole mechanism is what is a touch point for Picasso and Braque in their initial analytical cubism. And they're trying to capture, again, the simultaneity, right? Of the machine, of what the machine is doing, and then the image that the machine is making. So in Mademoiselles d'Avignon, again, I am not an art historian, and I prefer to interpret, I like to interpret things, like tell my own stories about stuff. So Picasso is just challenging our sense of beauty, our sense of perhaps history and aesthetics. And I'll stop talking in a minute. The other interesting thing about Picasso and his appropriation is, of course, it is shocking, all right? And it's a new experience for us.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very well. Let me say my words. I enjoyed it very well. He saw something of beauty, and let me take this back home. But he brought it back home for real. If you see his home, it's nothing but a warehouse for Robert from Bob and Dan and beautiful African art. He became a student of art. That's all I have to say about that. I just want to ask you about semiotics, because semiotics, philosophically Eastern European, that's one thing. Walter Benjamin, and then Sartre, and then Pablo Picasso said, "Yo, this is what it is." I wanted to hear that, but go ahead, I'm done.
Thank you so much.
It's an interesting subject, the whole idea of the form and the content. I've been curious, just the whole idea about masks, whether they're African masks or something else. New Orleans, there's two stages to that. There's two stories going on there. The person that is wearing the mask has a story. The mask that they're putting on is another story. It may be complementary.
The dance they do with the mask. This is true. Yep.
So, it's a form context thing, and you wear your mask.
I think I'm talking too much right now. I'll log off. I'm being too much.
Jamal Levi-Strauss. So, we're touching in the world of anthropology, but there's a book called The Way of the Mask, and it's Claude Levi-Strauss's
grown-ass man. I know very well
an analysis of Inuit Eskimo imagery.
Well done. Well done. Salute.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
I'll take a string of that conversation because I learned a lot of new stuff there, and just say we can have a very modern conversation right now about the small or local business that wants to brand itself, and they have an artist in their family. They're trying to bring culture to this logo mark branding, extended, and you have an industry that's saying, oh, that doesn't meet the industry standards for design, and it won't resonate with people. And that was the story. And I wonder if that's still true. I wonder if now that more culture is and stories and textures being brought to the conversation about branding, is it true that it won't stick in people's minds if it's not symmetrical and it doesn't only convey one idea? And I hesitate to tell people that anymore, you know?
And I said I wasn't going to say anything or touch on it, but I also want to bring up the controversy that goes along with Pablo Picasso and, you know, taking this idea of the mask and not giving credit to where he came up with the ideas of when he went and visited those African countries and came and brought it back and then put it in his work. And that how that's covered over, so to speak. But again, it's an unfolding that continues to happen and that people are continuing to have issues with, where they're, you know, looking for the credit that was given. So although it might be, you know, right now a good thing that you're saying that, you know, oh, in Western, you know, cultures and societies, you know, Pablo Picasso did a great thing. But again, he stripped away something and took it for himself, which again, as we know, has happened through colonization, you know, throughout the centuries that, you know, I mean, billions of years or however long, you know, colonization has been going on, where people take things from other cultures and then use it and misappropriate it. So I want to bring that part of it in, that it's not all a beautiful thing about Pablo Picasso and his mask.
Totally. And thank you so much, Rikiesha, for making sure that was said. It's really important. But we also just exchanges, right? We're, you know, this constant exchange of opportunities. So I think Stephen, Raquel, can Stephen join us? Yep.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. I wanted to a couple of things. One with the back to the sequoia tree and I guess the lines that are there. I like the fact that it is off center. That brings a sense of realism to it, because people don't live in straight lines. So I think that's you know, something that I appreciate it. Also, you've mentioned metaphysics a couple of times, just kind of on the outskirts of these conversations. And I wanted to go back to this pandemic. In I guess from what my opinion is, this pandemic did something that has never been done before worldwide. Everyone had to stop. And when everyone stopped, I think there was an additional metaphysical component that people became aware of. So as I venture through social media and I talk in, you know, various apps and whatnot, I hear people talk about this new awareness. And I think people have kind of gotten away from the traditional religion, and they have leaned into themselves during this time that they were stuck at home and come up with this inner spirituality / metaphysical experience. And I just wanted to get the panel's opinion on that. Thanks.
Beautiful. Richard.
Well, it's a yes. I think that that's the case. Anytime you're in a form of isolation and your normal communications and stimuli and so forth are cut off or restricted, you develop new coping mechanisms. And if metaphysics, if you put it on the spiritual end of the continuum, and on the other end of the continuum is kind of a practical accommodation to the difficulties that you have, you know, who knows, if somebody may start planting a garden because they can't go out to the grocery store to buy groceries, and they may become very involved in the whole ethos of getting into the earth and growing things and seeing something come to fruition and so forth. And that can be a metaphorical, or I mean, a metaphysical kind of manifestation of the physical activity they're doing.
Okay.
I think even, well, I was just going to say, I think even off of that, on the spiritual aspect, I think even people of faith were forced to kind of look at metaphysical, because faith was some people's faith may have been challenged because the pandemic made you say that just because there is a, you know, this thing, coronavirus, that my faith will not necessarily protect me from it. So where, you know, religion kind of would cover afterlife, metaphysical can kind of cover your human experience right now. So I think even people of faith were kind of brought over to how am I maintaining and coping during this time while I'm still here, you know? So I agree with that as well.
Yep, and to jump off the, or to piggyback on those things, I think that it was a looking into ourselves too. And I know that when I was at the opening with Ebony, we talked about this source, and we're trying to get back to understanding where the source of our getting back to ourselves is, you know, coming from. So it gave us time to be silent with ourselves, and again, to really hear that inner, again, voice or the inner self that we know exists. But sometimes with all the busy and all the things that we had going on and still have going on, we haven't had time to really rest with it and really sit with, again, where our faith lies. It's, again, we're talking about, you know, what Ebony brought up, or again, what does it actually mean to exist and be in this space and in this time right now? So a lot of, even with my work, as I've mentioned before, with posting on Instagram, it's about me getting back and understanding my position in this world. And I know that it's big. You know, before I might have thought that it was a small thing, but I think about how many people I'm touching through my stories, again, through my Instagram feed, where people, again, can even go back to the beginning. And that first picture that I posted, it was, you know, maybe something about the picture. And I asked this question about, you know, you thought that this picture was going to be of me and my son and how close he is to me. But really, this picture is about showing how close God is to us. Or again, if you believe in God or whatever the thing is that you believe in, and that is just like this picture is showing the closeness that we are to it if we just stop and, you know, kind of have that moment to rest with it.
Thank you so much. You know, we have to wind this down, and there's two things. There's a very interesting comment from Shirley Myers in the chat line, but I just want to give everyone a definition here around metaphysics. So the origins of the word come from Aristotle. It just means after physics, and Aristotle's concept is that they're elementary things that then can recombine, right? So it's a relationship of a material, a being, and then how it might become. And then it evolves, you know, now we fast forward to 21st century, and I actually have notes on this, but I'm not going to share them with you, but it is very much being and becoming is an extremely interesting subject. And this appreciation that whatever state something is in now, right, we should allow ourselves to imagine other states it can be, other states it has been, right? In other words, we just shouldn't be complacent. And also we should enjoy our misunderstandings to emerge into an understanding. That's Richard.
No, I agree.
Good. Okay,
and
great.
I think this should be part one of this conversation.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And can I plug in there? Can I plug in just right there that it takes the spiritual practice? The spiritual practices are a big part of metaphysical. So it's part of Science of Mind for a while. So I read that, studied that. It's the spiritual practices that get you to manifest something. And so that's the part of the human experience that's kind of like dealt with into guiding you into metaphysical.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, okay. Shirley did such a great job kind of talking about the circle to align diagrams in the gallery. So I'm just going to let her statement be there. I just want to thank Stephen and Jamal for participating with us as a panelist, and everyone for coming tonight. The next Soda Talk, I think, is going to be Annette Cowenberg and her sewing circle. So we're going to be setting that up in the next month. And I believe it's going to be the 29th or the 30th of November. So stay tuned to that. And yeah, Raquel, Francis, do you need to say anything else right now before we sign off?
They went home.
They might have gone home.
We're gone. Did you want to mention the next Latino Design Histories event?
Yes, thank you so much. I forgot about that. That's the other thing. Yeah, good.
Yes, totally. I want to mention that first I want to say thank you to all our panelists. You did like a really great job. It was an amazing conversation, and I can't wait to see the recording and dig deeper on some topics that you talked. Our next SOTA event right after Annette's is gonna be the Latino Design Histories event with Patricia Lara Betancourt from Colombia and Livia Rezende from Brazil. They're gonna be talking a special edition that they co-edited for the Design History Society from London. They are partnering with us in this event with AIGA Baltimore, Stevenson University, and AIGA Unidos. So it's November 18th. Please check out our website to see more details.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Raquel. Good night, everyone. Have a safe night. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night.
Good night.